Okay, so one of the fun things that we often see with two-point perspective is a city. Cities are really fun to draw because there's so many elements within them. You could draw a city in one point for sure, but this is just sort of nice because we can see two sides of the block. So here is our horizon line. We're going to push our vantage points all the way off to the side. Now, an illustrator, a drafter, might actually have extra pieces of paper way off that the vantage points sit on if you want to zoom in on something. But we're going to show it because we're learning perspective. So let's see the front edge of our building on the block. And this is going to kind of come to us. All of a sudden, you're going to start seeing what I'm talking about. We're going to build this a little bit off center just for interest. And we're going to come up here. And here is going to be the first edge of our building. We're going to pull the edges back. Now, most of the time, buildings exist on the same front part of the street. So we're just going to go ahead and make it less easier and pull this back. Because that front edge of the building is probably going to exist there. Now the top of this building, I'm going to stop though, and I'm going to show you the depth of the building in this way. And sucking this back to this vantage point. Again, I'm not drawing the lines all the way back because this is just one building I'm building. This line and this line had better be perpendicular and parallel. Otherwise, your life is difficult. Notice, right? 2 points, there is no perpendicular lines. Everything is either vertical or going back to the vantage point. That's a huge difference. I'm not building anything that's perpendicular, only parallel, and vanishing back. Very different. Here's our first building. And this building over here was built a little later. It's a smaller mom and pop kind of a restaurant next to this office building. I'm just making up the story as I go. And this is a little smaller. And then it had another skyrise built right up next to it because actually the family had owned it for a long period of time. But they wouldn't sell. They wouldn't sell it. So there's two kind of big, massive buildings built up around it, but that's okay because they've got a great lunch deli and all the office people come there to eat. So that comes back. And this comes back. Now, the cool addition, okay, let's make this end back here though, because they couldn't afford to make this really fat building. They only had so much money. It's just the big front and then side. On this little mom and pop, they opened up a rooftop garden for lunch, which was a huge hit. So we're going to see the top of this. And then we're going to go ahead and put, actually just let's add a little extra line here. And this is their kind of fence. And they even put like plants up here and stuff. They're like, oh my gosh, people could eat up here. Okay. So back here though, and this is something that, funny story, and I don't really know why, but New York does not have alleys. I guess that's the time period that it was built in. And cities ever since have made alleys because you need a place to store your garbage. And in a lot of cities, the garbage trucks will go down here, pick up the garbage, or come back around the block. You'll have alleys, backsides of buildings to each other, and they'll pick up all the garbage. So in New York, they'll have all the garbage outside, has to get picked up. Big, big buildings there, and they must have something else going on because I don't think that they have huge dumpsters outside. I'm not quite sure how that works, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. So see, every time I'm flipping, everything on the left-hand side of the building goes back to this vanishing point, to the right goes to this side. Okay, so I've got some buildings. That feels good. I've got a little alleyway. I might open this up. Now, we haven't really decided how big the people are. I kind of have a little bit here, so I'm going to go with that. So then actually the street sidewalk should be about that thick. I'm not sure how far back I'm going, so I'm just going to let that go back. As far as this sidewalk, I might break it up because that would be a really weird long block to go on forever. And so let's put another street here. I'm going to kind of make it about that big. It's going to be parallel to the horizon line because these city planners were really good about their city planning. Cool thing when I went to Chicago to school, well, it's not so cool, but the downtown Chicago burnt down, and brain, this goes back. No, this is horizontal. No, this goes on here. That doesn't look right. Brain has to think about that for a second. This should be horizontal, but it looks weird. They rebuilt the entire town. Oh, I know why, because this should go back to this vanishing point. Yep. That looks better. See how that fits in there better? And this just extends that line. There we go. Okay, because they're vertical, or it goes back to the line, see? And so they rebuilt the entire city, so the downtown is all like squares, and it's really nice to drive around in. Probably, maybe you've heard of Boston, was not built that way. It's an old city, never burnt down. And, oh, this goes back to here. That's what's going on. See, that street looks weird. See, my brain's flipping from 1 point to 2 point. And the streets in Boston are crazy and snake all over the place, because they just started kind of popping up. And they're also like horse and buggy days rather than automobiles, right? Where on the West Coast, the cities are built with the automobile in mind, and so the streets are wider and the buildings are built around that. But you go to these older cities that are horse and buggy age, and the streets are really windy and do lots of really crazy stuff. So there's another block, and some more buildings started. Let's say I want to put a door on here. The door straight up and down, right? Because we're living in 2 point, we're living in straight up and down and vanishing point. This goes back. This is a double door. And then they've got some windows. Mom and Pop live up above. Look, I'm guesstimating. Not the best choice. Not a very good example. And look, that didn't pay off so great for me. It's on sort of the right track, but not completely. Let's say I want to put some more windows up here for the city dwelling lifestyle up above. Let's say they also rent out the top floor. They live up there in the middle floor. They rent out to artists. And this is kind of a modern building. These big, huge windows there, something. And that's Mom and Pop. And so then we can put some more doors here. We could even make more of a grand architectural entrance. That would be kind of fun. And put this top edge here. This inside, let's make it like a alcove kind of, where you come in and then you go into the building. So then this is going to go straight up and down. And then the front of the doors are back here. So you come into that space first, kind of make more of a grander entrance. And you go into some of these buildings in the big cities and they really want to set off their buildings. So I might want to have something systematic because that's smart. And I want to have those windows go back into space. So I'm just going to do them every ½ inch. This might be a little wide for this scale. And then I'm going to pull this back, this side, left-hand side back to this side of the vanishing point. And now all of a sudden I have windows. Might also be able to use this for other architectural details. So pulling this all the way back. Imagine that is done. And then on the other side, most of the time these would meet up. And I come off of that. Sometimes you see like checkerboards or like just really cool kind of things happening here on these buildings. Different shaped tops. Alcoves and arches built into that. And we're just going to kind of see that as an idea of how to do that back. Now let's give myself the other side of the street. For this perspective, this street would be here, and then I could build another building here, which would block that off. So let's make this a park, because that doesn't work very good for a demonstration to block off what you're doing. And then I'm going to pull this back to here, because they live in a world of nicely formed streets. And a sidewalk. It's a little wider because we're closer to it. And we want to put a row of trees on here. I'm going to give myself the base. This is where it's going to touch the ground. This is where the tops are going to be. This could also be a fence. This is straight up and down. This is going to be my row of trees along here. They could be these kinds of trees. But probably most of the time in the cities they do leaf trees. I think partially because of how tall they grow. So I might just give myself a starting point, and I want to make sure they're going to get smaller. These lollipop trees. Okay, so it's going to follow that edge. And then I can just kind of do this straight up and down. Maybe I should do the bottom part. And then these need to get closer. Just like there's a tendency to make these kind of go boom, boom, boom all of a sudden. Keep it straight up and down. These would get smaller. Let's just say that it ends here though. Just going to rough those in so I could see where I was going with them. Right, then I would erase this part. I wanted to make sure that they're getting smaller as I went back into the distance, right? So play around, add some elements. Everything's either going to be straight up and down or sucked back to these vanishing points. Everything. 2-point perspective city.